I'm Rob Downey, a family practice MD and Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. I'm coming to you from Seaworthy Functional Medicine in Homer, Alaska. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. Hello, Seaworthy community, here with Joe Rignola, my friend and colleague of now many years. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Dr. Rob, good to be with you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I've been recently doing a presentation on peace that I wanted to share with you, and I do think it has standalone value about the science of peace and why it's so important to our health. And so today will be a little different. If you're, this may not be the best one to do audio only, though it could be, but this one has slides, and so it's a good one to watch on YouTube. And also, if you also use our Fullscript account, then one of the first of 3 sales of the year is coming up. And so there's going to be supplements for peace there on Fullscript that I'll talk about at the end. But as always, I try to put the informational content first. And if that's the reason you're here, you can benefit, no strings attached. So without further ado, peace, a presentation. And Joe and I will both be commenting. We've both got things to say about this. So there's a deliberacy in how we teed this up.
You'll be able to see the slides now, Rob. I'm excited for this. We could all use a little more peace these days. So.
They're on screen. So if you're confident that our audience can see them, we're ready to go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so here's a little audience engagement. Ask yourself, what's more important, healthy whole food or managing stress? And this question is deliberate because one of the most well-known people in functional medicine might not say it now, but Dr. Mark Hyman did say in the past, healthy whole food is the single most important thing to our health. And I'll be talking today about how there's an argument to be made that being at peace is the single most important thing. So ask yourself that. Here's the functional medicine timeline. It's a reminder that the things that come before we're born, mediators and perpetuators in our lives, the triggers or triggering events, and then the signs, symptoms, or diseases that we develop, these are related. And we can use this tool to learn a lot about ourselves. And we're going to use the timeline today briefly around a really important issue of being at peace, which is the importance of feeling safe. And if anybody ever looks at this presentation, feel free, Joe, to show that next one, the matrix. Here's the busy version of the matrix for people who get taught how to do this work, all these different nodes of function of the body and how they interrelate. But you'll see here in a second, I'll show you the more friendly version. And so again, on the left, what comes before antecedents? What are triggers? What are mediators or perpetuators of improving our health and vitality or lack thereof? The bottom are the lifestyle factors, which people know from my work. I've named the 5 Ps. Mental, emotional, spiritual health is right in the center. And then these different nodes of function of the body. And don't want to get too techie here today, but you'll see a few examples as we talk about how these can relate to peace. So this is called allostatic load. This is from physiology, biophysiology, biology. And basically it just means that stress, which is that arrow on the right, as stress levels go up, our performance increases. And the easiest way to relate to this would be anytime you've ever taken a test. If you don't have any sense of existential threat about the importance of passing the test, you won't do terribly well. And if you have too much worry, you won't do well. You'll get stressed out or freaked out. And it turns out this is super important because, as you'll see in just a moment on this next slide, stress is the source of our health. We have to be stressed to be vital, show up, be healthy in the world. Our mitochondria, the power plants of our cells, have to be stressed to replicate and be healthy. Our resilience in the face of life's challenges is based on our responses to stress, and our ability to be confident is part of our ability to be at peace. Now, here's the autonomic nervous system, and I always just say for reminders, just think of it as the automatic nervous system. It's running. It can be affected by our conscious thought, but lots of folks know we're paying lots of attention now to the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory. And just as the reminder here, this is the brain and spinal cord, the nerves wandering around the body. And we'll talk for just a sec about the sympathetic and parasympathetic components. So fight, flight, freeze, faint is there on the left. I'm using red color coding for kind of the alarm state. And then the things that we want and need day to day to be our dominant or baseline mode: rest and digest, rest and restore, digestion, immunity, fertility, detox, biotransformation, workout recovery, bright cognition. Those are driven by parasympathetic dominant mode. So just know one of the key things that we need to do is primarily be in this blue mode and really only get into fight, flight, freeze, faint when there's a threat that we have to respond to. So just kind of, again, a little summary slide and trying to visually show the feeling, the vibe we're after when we're in that state. Here's a reminder that we can work these different issues either direction. We can be in parasympathetic mode and benefit from the feeling of peace, or we can deliberately try to cultivate a feeling of peace through our restorative activities or our positive attitude or good self-care or heart rate variability optimization, you name it, which then feeds parasympathetic tone. So you can work this circle either direction. Always a good idea, if you have the fire in the belly for it, to check out the work of Dr. Heidi Hanna, one of my heroes. You can go see one of the very first Field Notes podcasts I ever did with her. She was gracious enough to give me her time. She's a radiant person, stress researcher, and she points out we're wired for safety. To be at peace, we need to feel safe. And you'll see on this next slide something we need to remember. It's particularly important now. Here's the timeline. Not only do we need to feel safe, but we need to be safe. And so anything we can do for ourselves or others to be physically safe, emotionally safe, it's important for ourselves, it's important for our family, it's important for our communities, and it's a big contribution we can make to the world to remember that if we pray for others to be at peace, perhaps we need to show up in whatever way we can and make sure that people are literally safe. We should also, one person's advice, my advice, let's be careful to be really conscious of the fact that it can sound insensitive if we suggest to somebody they meditate and they are, if they're in a shelter, that can feel pretty hard. So physical safety, emotional safety, etc. Super, super important. Now here's the matrix. There's the mental, emotional, spiritual at the center, the communication node. That's our brain. The prefrontal cortex is the chill executive. That's about safe decision making. Stress management, that's our ability to be at peace. And those things are feeding one another in a beneficial fashion when we're in a state of peace. And we can work any of those nodes any direction. So we can be more mentally, emotionally, spiritually illuminated or grounded. We can calm down our adrenals. We can do things that reboot executive control from the stress to stress brain to the prefrontal cortex. We can manage our stress, whatever that means to us, change the stressor itself, like the job, change our response to work demands. So lots of power in these nodes here. And then here's the answer to the audience prompt question at the beginning. That whole food, I would tend to agree with Dr. Hyman that it's absolutely critical. However, you'll see a slide here, not just yet, but when we get to it, where if you're stressed out, you don't absorb your food. And so you have to be in a state of peace for the whole food to go up into that assimilation node and get digested. The communication node needs to be in parasympathetic dominant mode to turn on rest and digest software. We don't detox, biotransform if we're not in a state of peace. We're not energetic. We don't have good immunity. So you can see here, it's the OG topic in functional medicine from my perspective is to be in a state of peace. And also just a reminder, if we're mentally, emotionally, spiritually sour, not in a state of gratitude, state of bitterness, grudge, lack of forgiveness for ourselves or others, we don't sleep, we don't absorb our food, we're stressed out, we don't detox, biotransform, we're slumpy, we get every cold that comes along. We're more at risk for cancer, and our digestion is shut off. So there are huge consequences for this. I always want to make sure and deliver for folks and give them specific granular detail about where they can go and what they can do. And again, I'm not wedded to the things that I'm recommending, just want to share with people that these are available. So we're going to talk about heart rate variability, genetic expression, free cortisol levels, and micronutrient testing. So you saw a minute ago the HeartMath inner balance device that's got an ear clip and a chest clip, and it syncs up to your phone. And then when you see your degree of heart rate variability, as you do HeartMath sessions, if you're in the left area there, the way the heart rate wanders has these big amplitude sine waves, which puts you into a state of peace via rebooting executive control from the stress to stress midbrain up to the prefrontal cortex. And these sessions through the HeartMath Institute and one of these devices are really powerful. And that low coherent state on the right, when we're in stress to stress mode, with that jagged low amplitude heart rate wandering, that's assigned to us via data and neurofeedback of where we're starting from and where we're trying to get to. So super powerful standalone tool and a really beautiful way of relating to our lives.
Rob, just a question on that. As far as when people are checking out their heart rate variability, I could see in the chart here like what's optimal and what's not, but I think there's maybe a misconception about that your heart rate should be very, steady, and that there
Yeah,
shouldn't be variability in it. So do you want to explain that a little bit?
absolutely. Thanks for the prompt. So just I'll say in advance, it's really important if you purchase the device. And again, I am not affiliated with the HeartMath Institute, but they are my heroes, those folks. And so Roland McCready, he is the hard bench scientist there that figured this stuff out, including the fact that our heart is not like a motor. And so it does not idle at a certain fixed rate. Normal physiology is for our heart rate to wander at baseline, which is not intuitive.
Mm.
And so it turns out the character of how our heart rate wanders at baseline is directly linked to whether we are in sympathetic versus parasympathetic dominant mode. And the wildest part of all is that if we cultivate good heart rate variability, the more HRV, the better. These big amplitude, smooth sine waves, the nerves from the heart to the head and the rest of the nervous system are the executive. This is our heart telling the rest of us how to be chill.
Hmm.
So it's incredible physiology, incredibly beautiful. And the HeartMath Institute, I just bought a new one of these devices. My wife teased me yesterday that I skipped my session, and so how could I present myself as an expert when I wasn't doing enough of it at home? But I am all in this. This is my big play this year. I've been doing HeartMath to some degree off and on for 12 years. And my big play this year is it's a devoted 5 day a week practice. And they have tons and tons and tons of lifetime access to the educational materials that go with HeartMath device if you purchase an inner balance, which mine was $250. So great investment and one that I heartily endorse.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
And so here, just again, we're in the matrix. And so here's this structure, the heart, and then the nerves via the communication node go to our mental, emotional, spiritual center and put us in a state of greater clarity, confidence, abundance, peace, etc. And then that goes down to our ability to respond to stressors. So really beautiful stuff. Here's my hero, Roland McCready. You can just see that he's a great guy. This is the inner balance device, and the dose is about 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, though really any dose is beneficial. And now that I have one of these, which is good, I recommend it so much. I really should be doing this myself. It's all standalone, and it's a big plunge. There's a lot of content. There's a lot. It's all beautiful. It's all wonderful. It's a lot interesting, but it's a whole standalone, beautiful world. In a world that feels really stressful now, this is the science of how to be at inner peace. We can also measure free cortisol levels down in that communication node. This is being described as what the adrenals are doing, but it's actually the adrenals having cortisol floating around in our body, and then the degree to which our salivary glands and kidneys convert it to free cortisol every day. And we've got this next slide. It shows what somebody's free cortisols are doing in the morning, and then 30 minutes, 60 minutes, afternoon and bedtime, those blue dots. So that sort of manager response of the free cortisol to have this nice little cortisol awakening response every morning. That's like the manager showing up to everybody and saying, hey, everybody, let's get ready for the day. Let's organize our materials, assign tasks, work effectively together. If people have blue dots above the gray curve, they'll be in sort of wired and tired mode, more so young people. And then this, historically, this person's picture has been called adrenal fatigue, which isn't the adrenals being tired actually, but those low blue dots mean they need more. Here's this is just a sample report from Genova, but this is where we can do blood testing to see if the person has enough antioxidants and minerals and essential fatty acids, digestive fire, amino acids. And this is basically what I saw in a person who was pretty good on their first test. And then they got really stressed about taking all the right supplements to correct this, and they actually got worse. So again, you cannot absorb the nutrients if you're not in parasympathetic dominant mode. Last, some meta and philosophical dimensions. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. He was nominated in 1967 for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King. His mother was killed in the Vietnam War, and he was an advocate for peace. And this is a reminder that peace is a verb. And so I think this is perhaps the most powerful message in today's presentation. If we want to be at peace, we need to start working to be at peace and take action. And this can feel painful because we think, well, I'll be at peace when I'm at peace. But unfortunately, that's passive, and we do have to take actions, do something to start creating it for ourselves to cultivate more of it. Brief reminder here, Heidi Hanna's friend, Bruce McEwen, I believe now deceased, pointed out that we have to have agency, kind of related to the Thich Nhat Hanh slide. If the neighbor's dog is barking and it's bothering us, it's our responsibility to figure out what our response is. If we blame the neighbor, if we blame the dog, I guess maybe it's a stress relief valve to be in blame mode, but we don't have empowerment to do something about it. And last, we'll talk about how restorative practices like yoga and meditation change genetic expression. So here, Herb Benson at Harvard, he talks about turning on our rest and restore genes based on his landmark article that I've got cited there. 15 non-meditators, 15 lifetime meditators, 15 people taught to meditate over 3 months, 400 or 500 markers of beneficial genetic expression, meaning our book of life. What do we turn on? What do we turn off? And things like insulin sensitivity versus free cortisol levels. The folks taught to meditate and take good care of themselves over 3 months, they covered half the ground from the non-meditators to the lifetime meditators in 3 months. So this is available to all of us. Here's references where people can get mindfulness apps. The best one, just for starting from the ground up, is Headspace. For my patients that are Christian, they often like Abide. Insight Timer is free, has brilliant content. Calm is well built. My Yoga Online from Gaiam, very trustworthy, very safe way to do yoga at home. And in general, the dose is based on the science is about 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, but any dose is beneficial. Just a reminder, we believe the stories that circumstance tells us, and then those often become the stories we tell ourselves. Positive psychology is very important, resetting the narrative. A lot of this is based on Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. His work with Vietnam vets, coining the term post-traumatic stress disorder, and also the ACEs study out of Kaiser Permanente. So we need to reset the narrative to heal. That can be challenging. This is a book I read in high school. You're always free to change your mind, choose a different future, a different past. I really loved this book in high school. I just reread it after recommending it to my son, but I always struggled with this phrase. And I finally realized it's the past is a story that keeps retelling itself in us to the degree to which we're willing to keep retelling the story. And really, again, the easiest explanation here is just, again, it took me a long time to realize I sort of had a grudge about stuff, son, father stuff. There's certain things I wanted from my parenting I didn't get. Same thing was true for my dad. But when I reset that narrative and from a compassion perspective, realized that's kind of all fathers and sons and gave him and me grace. I did change my past. I changed the fractal and holographic manifestation of a misunderstanding into a new and clearer way of being, which has been profoundly healing for me and a lot of my patients who change their past by changing their relationship to it get a lot healthier. So it's part of the meta or philosophical dimension of being at peace.
That also reminded me, I was just listening to an interview with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he was saying that approximately 50% of our memories are inaccurate.
Mm.
And so when we're thinking about our past and suffering from our perceptions of our past, half of those didn't ever even happen
Yeah.
because our perception is off on what actually happened. I thought that was really interesting and
Oh, very
dovetailing
good.
this.
Very helpful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And then, given that Richard Bach is admittedly a bit new age, I don't think it'd be a balanced presentation if I also invoked a very conservative person who was also a hero of mine, David Brooks. He had a bit of a breakdown. This is what he says, not me, but he was a journalist. He got divorced. He looked around his apartment and realized there were just a few things in the fridge, a few pencils in the drawer, and he was lonely and isolated. And so he reflected on what meaning, and he just talked about how just being human beings basically is so stressful, so challenging that a lot of people feel broken. And what he did is he just took this narrative and he said, those of us that get broken in the process, he points out that we can be broken open. This becomes then the blessing of adversity. This is where the light leaks out. This is where and how we show up for ourselves and others is to transmute or transform that sense of brokenness into how we show up, the deepening of our compassion, the deepening of our resilience, the deepening of our strength. And so this is his book about that. And it's another dimension of peace, the blessing of adversity. Once we meet ourselves compassionately in our suffering, sometimes then we can transform that into our superpower. And deliberate closing, mental, emotional, spiritual is at the center of all of this. If we don't have a sense of meaning, if we don't have a sense of our relationship to something greater, it's very hard to be at peace. It's very hard to be healthy. And it's really important to our health, whatever that is for us. So, peace is a verb. And that concludes, but I want to then let folks know who want to stick around for a minute. Just there's 4 Fullscript sales a year, and this year's offering is Supplements for Peace. And I won't bury the lead here. It's ashwagandha and cordyceps. So it's doubling down and taking big doses of ashwagandha and cordyceps twice a day. Why? Because they are the OG tonic adaptogens. One's a mushroom, one's a nightshade. If you're nightshade intolerant, the cordyceps would be a go, not the ashwagandha. But this borrows a page from natural medicine, where there are just a few small footprint items that no matter where you're at in your free cortisol profile, they always push the right direction. So these create stress resilience. And then the active ingredient of lavender, lavella at bedtime, just a single dose decreases anxiety and increases restorative sleep. And lavender is just such a neat gift. These 3 plants, lavender, cordyceps, and ashwagandha, have something to offer just about all of us. And so that's on Fullscript for anybody that wants to level up there.
Fantastic. And I'll make sure that those links are either to the side or right underneath the video or underneath the audio or somewhere in the email if you're getting this via email. So make sure you can get those. Great content, Dr. Rob.
Anything you flashed on, Joe, that we didn't get to get into while we were talking?
No, I think I added my 2 cents in the middle of that here and there, and yeah, that's really good content. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Awesome.
All right.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the Seaworthy podcast. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. If you think we've earned it, please consider giving this podcast a like, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. Thanks.